Hey guys, let's talk books. Welcome to my chaotic mess. If you're new here, my name is Melissa, and I normally do cleaning content, cooking content, decorating content. But today I want to kind of just relax it a little, even though you can probably see in the background, I got some stuff I gotta do. But let's relax it just a little and talk about books. I have done book reviews in the past, but this isn't going to be a book review. This is going to be going through the books I've read. So, again, I love to read. Um, my husband bought me a Kindle in April. Before that, I would purchase paperback books. As you can see here, I have a whole bookshelf of books that I have not gotten rid of. I have donated a ton of books over the years. I used to have probably a shelf this big full of books that I got them down to this smaller shelf. And that wasn't because I absolutely wanted to get rid of them. It was more along the lines of I'm getting old and it's getting harder for me to move books, which is why my niece is coming down in October. I'm going to have her go through that and take any books that she wants. Whatever she doesn't want, I am going to donate it because, again, I have a Kindle now. My husband bought it for me. And it's really hard to move these. That's why I got rid of my DVDs. I think I have like 50 DVDs now. I used to have over 500 DVDs. And I used to move them everywhere we moved. It was totes and totes of DVDs. So I'm down to like 50, and that's mainly just my Disney movies and a few special ones that, you know, I don't want to risk never being able to find again. So, yeah. So let's talk books. I use Goodreads. If you don't have Goodreads and you are a book reader, I definitely recommend getting it. For one, you can keep track of the books you read on there. You don't have to have a Kindle. You can manually put in books you read. If you have a Kindle, you can link your Kindle to your Goodreads account and it will mark them for you. But the good thing about Goodreads is you can follow people and you can get recommendations off of what they're reading. So one of the books, a couple of the books on my list, I've actually got from other YouTubers I follow, it's only two. The only YouTubers that I follow that I can remember ever mentioning Goodreads is Tara Michelle and Fearfully Created. And I follow both of them, and I do get recommendations from them. You're also going to learn that the Kindle Unlimited series offers a really good recommendations. So, anyway, I don't want to talk too much. I'm not going to be giving away like plots or anything. I'm simply going to tell you if I think the book is worth reading or not reading. So leave it at that, what you want. So we're going to start off with the only physical book that I have put in that I read for this year. I know I've read more before Spare, and I know I read one after Spare, but Spare's the one we're going to be talking about real quick. But I can't remember what they are, so I did not put them in my Goodreads because, for one, I set a goal for this year for 30 books, and I didn't want to put in books that I was not sure if I read them this year or if it was last year. So just to be fair, I only put in Spare because I know I finished it in March. I know that for a fact because I finished it when I was up at my brother's house because he wanted to borrow it. I ended up giving it to him because, again, I'm getting rid of all my books. But anyway, if you don't know what Spare is, it's written by Prince Harry. It's basically his viewpoint of how the press treated him. I know there's a lot of videos out there saying that he's slandering his family, this and that. So I'm only going to say this about it is I didn't see it as slandering his family. I seen it as more slandering of the press, which in my opinion, the press is really dirty to not only celebrities, but definitely to the royal family. And that, again, is my opinion. I don't think the press is as restricted in Europe as it is here in the United States. Um, because some of the stories I see them write over there, I don't think would ever get published here in the United States. I could be wrong, but anyway. So Spare, if you want to form your own opinion, I wouldn't go off of what other people said. I think if you want to have an opinion about the subject, you need to read the book yourself before you go off and start spouting your opinion. Just my point of view, because I know I've seen a lot of people commenting on this particular book that I don't think actually ever read the book, because some of the points they bring up aren't ever mentioned in the book at all. So do yourself a favor, and before you form an opinion on a subject, do your own research on it. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, so after that, I got my Kindle. The first book I read on my Kindle was Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. I was very hesitant to read another Colleen Hoover book because the very first Colleen Hoover book I ever read was Regretting You, and I did end up liking it in the end, but the beginning was so boring, so slow. I could not get into it. So I just realized I'm like sitting over here hitting the microphone every now and then, and I'm sorry. I always forget that it's there, and I'm sitting here just like, so if you hear anything weird or if it sounds muffled at times, that's probably why. And I'm sorry, but I'm not redoing this. I'm going to try to do this in a one take. Granted, I will still be putting in the intro and outro. So, anyway. But yes, Reminders of Him was really good. It was very... I'm trying to think of the right word. It had me from page one. Like, it was good. Definitely read it. The next book I read was Layla by Colleen Hoover. And this book was good. Don't get me wrong, this book was good. But it was not what I expected from a Colleen Hoover book at all. It definitely had twists and turns. It's more of, in my opinion, more of a mystery than her normal romance, which I classify her as a romance. I don't necessarily know if she classifies herself as a romance. Sorry. But really good. So Layla by Colleen Hoover, I definitely recommend that. I only gave it 4 stars, and I don't remember why I gave it 4 stars, because I didn't write a review on it. I rate the books because when you finish it on your Kindle, if you have your Goodreads link to it, it will ask you to rate it, and I usually always rate it, but sometimes I don't go in and write the review. The next thing I read was The Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This is a series, and I've read the 2 that she has out. The third one comes out in September. So the first one is Things We Never Got Over, and the second one is Things We Hide from the Light, and I read them back to back because they're so good. Now, here's my only disclaimer. If you do not like spicy content, if you do not like adult content is what I mean by spicy, you are not going to care for this series, because they do have a lot of spicy content in it, and I mean spicy. I, for one, am not bothered by that, so I actually did enjoy the series. But yeah, I mean, it was really good. I I've read reviews that people didn't like this, and again, to each their own. I think people saw it as like they liked the first one, but then they didn't like the second one because they wanted the series to follow the first storyline continuously, and it still follows in a way, but it jumps. The main characters switch in each of the books. So the first one is about two particular characters. Like the other characters are kind of background characters. It's actually about three characters, and the rest are about background characters. I'm not going to give away. But then you get to the second one, and the main characters are different. But the other characters that you read about in book one are now background characters. So they're still mentioned, and you still know what's kind of going on in their lives. But you're following these two, I don't want to say new, because they were background characters in the previous story. And the third one is going to be about two more characters that were background characters in the first two books, but are now the main characters. If you follow my drift. So people were really upset about that it switched main characters. It didn't follow that storyline. And I hope what they do is after the third one, I hope they go back to the first characters and kind of, and maybe not even just the first characters, maybe do it like a split book kind of, where you're like, this chapter is about this person, this chapter is about this person, and that, it is kind of already like that, but it goes from this person, which in first book, one of them is Knox. I can't remember the second character's name. I read so much that sometimes the characters get blended, but it's Knox. Is it Knox? Or is that his brother? No, it's Knox. So it's Knox and then the girl. I can't remember her. But it will be like, this chapter will say Knox, this chapter will say her name, and so on and so forth. And in the second book, it does the same thing with the two characters. And actually, the first one will go into three sometimes, I'm pretty sure. If I remember correctly, it does go into, one of the chapters goes into the little girl's point of view. Anyway, I spent way too much time on that. But that was the Knock 'Em Out series, and it's by Lucy Score. And you can literally just type in Knock 'Em Out series and it will come up. The next one I want to discuss is the Housemaid and the Housemaid's Secret by Frida McFadden. First of all, I have grown to love Frida McFadden books. They are some of my favorite books to read. And I've only read maybe 4 or 5 of them. But the Housemaid and the Housemaid's Secret. The Housemaid, I will tell you, was pretty predictable for me. But when I say predictable, a lot of people that in the reviews that I read were, oh my god, I didn't see that coming, blah, blah, blah. And I had it figured out from the beginning, but I wonder if that's because I have like an inquisitive mind. I went to school for, criminal justice, and part of, our classes was picking up on details and stuff like that, because, if you're going to be like an investigator, you have to figure out small details and stuff like that. But anyway, but the second one, the second book, The Housemaid's Secret, I honestly didn't see that one coming, and it was really good. And I hope they continue this series, because the way that she ended it left room for her to continue the series. So, alright, so the next one is Hollow by Selena Myers. If you don't know who Selena Myers is, she goes by Selena Spooky Boo on TikTok and on YouTube. And she's also an author. She writes, and I think she self-publishes, but I could be wrong. But Hollow is about vampires. So if you aren't into the whole vampire thing, you might not like it, but now it's not your typical vampires. It's not sparkly vampires like Twilight, and it's not Dracula vampires like, Dracula. But it's really good. I did not think I was going to like it because the prologue was so long, like so long. It took me, I want to say about 30 minutes to read the whole prologue. And that's a long prologue. And it's not broke up into chapters because the prologue in itself is a chapter, but it was that long. So I didn't know if I was going to like that because I'm like, if the prologue is this long, how long are the chapters? And the chapters are long too, but at least there's like little breaking points in it. Well, at least I saw them as breaking points to where you could stop and walk away for a while and still pick up and it makes sense. So, I did not know if I was going to be able to really get into it because of the length of certain things, but it was really good. I really did enjoy it, and the way she ended it left it again on a cliffhanger, and I hope she writes another book for this series and doesn't leave us hanging. Alright, so the next one is Never Lie by Frida McFadden. And oh my god, if you don't read any other book by Frida McFadden, read this book. Never Lie. It is so dang good. And the plot twist, I didn't see it coming. And I am usually pretty good at predicting outcomes. And I did not see it coming at all. It was good. Anyway. So then, if you want to go to my Goodreads, I also have books in there that I've read over the years. Obviously not all of them, but just the ones that I remembered off the top of my head when I was filling out my Goodreads information. Alright, so the next one is The Inmate. It's also by Frida McFadden. Told you, love her. At least I'm guessing it's a woman. I don't know. Never really looked into it. But The Inmate was really good. And it's another book, like, I had it figured out for the most part. But what really got me was the person I had pegged for the second, we'll just say second bad person, was not who I thought it would be. So definitely a good plot twist there, and definitely another one that kind of kept me on my toes, and I was kind of shocked at the outcome. The next one I read was Waterfall. It's in the River of Time series. I actually was recommended. I didn't personally get recommended, but like I said, I go to my YouTubers that I watch, I go to their Goodreads, and I see what they've been reading. And this one was highly rated by Fearfully Created. And it's Waterfall, the River Time series by Lisa Ton Bergen. I later learned that this is actually part of a Christian book series. Like it's not Bible based. I want to throw that out there. They do mention God a lot in it, so if God offends you for whatever reason, you don't want to read it, but because they do mention God and if this is part of God's plan and blah blah blah. So I do want to throw that out there, but because I am recommending this book, but I also want you guys to know I am okay with anyone's personal beliefs. So if you don't personally believe in God and you don't want to read a book where they mention him a bunch, then don't read this book. But I personally don't care. It doesn't offend me. I'm not offended by a lot of things. I've come to learn this as an adult. Anyway, okay, so let's talk this book just real quick because I know we're getting a little long-winded here. but we're almost done. We're almost to the current books. The Waterfall series, I am going to be buying the second one. But this book, I did almost quit reading because I got to chapter 4 and I was still bored. But by chapter 5, I want to say chapter 5, I started really getting interested in it and it started picking up for me. And in the end, I ended up really enjoying it. It's just a matter of getting past the first few chapters. And there were a lot of people in the comments that basically said they couldn't do it. They got a couple chapters in and they just could not get into the book. And I'm not saying there's not books out there that I probably will never finish. In fact, I started reading Atlas Shrugged. It's a thick book, by the way. It's about this thick. It's probably a War and Peace thickness of a book. So, but when I was applying for colleges, one of the scholarships I was going for wanted you to read Atlas Shrugged and write a report on it. And I went out and I bought this book. And I got like 4 chapters in and I'm like, I can't do it. And I never finished it. In fact, I gave it away. So there are books out there that I don't know if I'll ever read. I'm not saying if I found Atlas Shrugged for free on Kindle, maybe I might sit down and read it. I don't know, but you're talking like War and Peace thick, and I don't know if I can do that. So, but yeah, people were saying that about the Waterfall book, and I almost agreed with them, but I also kept going because here's why I kept going. Because someone that I don't know him personally, but someone I follow on social media said this series was good. And I wanted to know why it was good. You know, I wanted to know why they thought this book was good. And I was not going to figure out based off of the first 4 chapters. Definitely would never figured it out based off the first 4 chapters. But I ended up, pushing through, and I ended up getting interested in it, and I ended up enjoying it, and I am planning on buying the second one in the series. But yeah, The Waterfall by Lisa Ton Bergen is the first in that series. The next book, and the one I just recently finished, is Ward D, and it's by Frida McFadden as well. And I'm telling you, I love Frida McFadden, and I could just solely read their books, and I would probably already have my 30. I don't even know if they have 30 books written, but I'll read 1 or 2 Frida McFadden, and then I'll read something else, and then I'll go back and read a Frida McFadden, and then I'll read something else, because I want to, for one, take a break between all the psychological thrillers, because nothing against people who solely read psychological thrillers, but I feel like if you don't put your focus onto another type of genre, you can really immerse yourself into that mindset, and I don't think it's necessarily good for you to be constantly thinking in that mindset. I think you need to take a step back from the psychological thrillers and kind of immerse yourself into a different world for a while, even if it's just one book, and then go back to the psychological thrillers. Just my opinion. But because psychological thrillers are great, don't get me wrong, but if you immerse yourself so much into that life, I feel like and again, maybe it's part of my psychology classes that I had to take in college, but I feel like you can start forming something called transference. I'm probably saying that wrong, but basically where you start to imagine yourself in that world, and then you start to bring that world into your actual reality. And so that's why I always recommend to people, if you're solely a romance person, take a break from romance, read something else. Because for one, romance gives you high expectations of what your relationship should look like. And in reality, relationships are not like that. Relationships are hard, relationships are messy, and relationships are never perfect like they are in the books. And I think, going back to the Knock 'Em Out series, I think that's why I like that series, is because it's romance, but it's not perfection. They talk about the hard stuff that these people are going through in these relationships. And I think it's more of a realistic romance rather than some of like your Harlequin romance novels where it's all lovey-dovey and everyone lives happily ever after, right? But that's not real life. And so yeah. So let's talk about what I'm currently reading. And I can't tell you much about it because I literally just started it yesterday. Because I finished the Ward D yesterday. So what I'm currently reading is Don't Let Me Fall by Kelsey Ray. Also, if you look at my Goodreads, it's going to show that I'm currently reading The Perfect Marriage as well. And that is one of those books, kind of like the Atlas Shrugged. I've started it, and I can't get past the prologue of that book. I don't know why. And I'm hoping one day I'll finish it. Otherwise, I'm just going to mark it as a 1-star and move on. That one was recommended by Tara Michelle. Not personally, again, she recommended it on her channel. And she said it was so good. And it's one of those books that I'm just like, I got to see why she thinks this book is so good. But I can't get past the prologue, to be honest with you. I'm half tempted after I finish this Kelsey Ray book, I'm half tempted to just skip the prologue altogether and start with chapter 1 and see how I do with that. So anyway, guys, those are the books on my current 2023 reading challenge for the Goodreads. Again, if you have Goodreads, feel free to add me. My link is down in the description below, because I would love to see what you guys are reading. And if you have any book suggestions and you don't want to join Goodreads and you just want to give me suggestions, leave those down in the comments below. And I will definitely look them up. I have a whole bunch of stuff on my want to read list. I have 63 books on my want to read list. And so I am more than willing to add to that list. I have no issues with that. If you liked this video, guys, please give it a thumbs up. I know it's not my typical content, and I know it's kind of long, but yes, if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. Again, comment down below any books that you have read, that you enjoyed, that you recommend, or go follow me on Goodreads. Any questions you have, leave those down below. As always, if you have any recipes that you would like me to try, leave those down below. And then if you haven't done so already, guys, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks, guys. Bye.